My name is Imani Washington, and I am 34 years old. I had just inherited $29 million and was rushing home to tell my husband the news that would change our lives. But I never made it. A truck slammed into me, and I woke up in the hospital alone. When I finally reached my husband Marcus, he wasn't worried. He was annoyed. He told me he had no time or money for a loser and hung up. Days later, he walked into my hospital room, wearing a brand new suit, holding hands with his new woman. He threw divorce papers on my bed. But when his new wife, a high-powered lawyer, looked at my face, she screamed and dropped her expensive briefcase. My husband had no idea. She was my lawyer, the one managing my $29 million trust. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you have ever been betrayed by the person who was supposed to love you most, hit that like button and subscribe because you will not believe what happened next. The beeping sound was the first thing I registered, a high-pitched, steady beep, beep, beep that cut through the fog in my head. I tried to open my eyes. The fluorescent lights of the hospital room felt like knives stabbing into my brain. I was at Mercy General Hospital in Atlanta. The room was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and something metallic. A sharp, tearing pain shot through my chest as I tried to take a deep breath. It felt like my ribs were grinding together. It all came flooding back in broken, terrifying pieces, the flash of massive headlights in my rear-view mirror blinding me, the horrifying, deafening sound of metal twisting and glass shattering, and just before that, hours before, the kind voice of an elderly lawyer, Mr. Hayes, in a polished downtown office. His office smelled of old books and expensive leather. "Congratulations, Ms. Washington. Your Aunt Hattie has left you her entire estate. The trust is valued at $29 million. $29 million. A number so large it felt unreal. The pain in my chest pulled me back to the present. I was alive. I had survived. My body felt like a lead weight, bruised and broken, but I was breathing. I frantically looked for my phone on the bedside table. It was there on the metal tray next to a plastic cup of water, but it was shattered. The screen was a spider web of broken glass, completely black. Useless. I fumbled for the nurse call button, my fingers weak and clumsy. I pressed it again and again. My husband. Marcus. Where is he? Does he know I'm here? Those were the first words I managed to get out when the door opened. A nurse came in. She was an older African-American woman, her scrubs a faded blue. Her face was kind but etched with the deep exhaustion of someone who has seen too much. Her name tag read, Jackie. She moved with a practiced efficiency, checking the IV drip connected to my arm, her eyes glancing at the heart monitor. She looked at me with a profound pity I didn't understand yet. "Honey," Nurse Jackie said, her voice low and tired. "You've been here for 4 days. You were in a coma. It was touch and go for a while." 4 days? My voice was a dry rasp. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Where is Marcus?" "My husband, Marcus Vance. He must be worried sick. Did he call? Is he in the waiting room?" I was desperate, clinging to the idea of him rushing down the hall. Nurse Jackie sighed, the kind of sigh that braces you for bad news. She avoided my eyes for a split second, long enough for my stomach to drop. "There has been no man named Marcus here to visit you, honey. Not one call. Not one message left at the front desk. We had your name as Imani Washington, and we listed a Marcus Vance as your emergency contact. We called him multiple times. No one answered." "No, that's impossible," I whispered, shaking my head, which sent a fresh wave of pain through my skull. He must be out of town. His startup. He travels for his startup." I was making excuses, I knew it, but the alternative was too horrifying to accept. I knew Marcus, my 36-year-old husband, could be selfish. I knew he was bitter about his failures, how he resented my stable, low-paying job at the nonprofit while his dreams crumbled. But not this, not abandonment. This had to be a mistake. "I have to call him." I insisted, trying to push myself up on my elbows, but the pain was blinding. I have to let him know I'm okay. My mind was racing, still believing this was all a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. I thought about the $29 million. He would be so relieved. This money would solve all our problems. It would make him happy again. He would come for me. He had to. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the heavy plastic receiver of the hospital phone Nurse Jackie handed me. I punched in Marcus's number, my fingers slipping twice on the keypad. It rang once, twice. On the third ring he picked up. But it was not his voice I heard first. It was the sound of his life. Loud R&B music, the clinking of glasses, and a burst of high-pitched laughter from a woman in the background. He was at a party. What? He barked into the phone, his voice sharp and annoyed, like I was a telemarketer interrupting his dinner. Marcus, I whispered. My voice cracked, and the first sob escaped. Marcus, it's me. Where are you? I could hear him huff an impatient sound. Imani! What is it? I'm busy. I'm right in the middle of a meeting with important partners. You know the deal I was telling you about. What do you want? I'm in the hospital. I cried, the tears flowing freely, now hot and stinging against my bruised skin. I was in an accident. I'm at Mercy General. There was a pause. The music in the background did not stop. His voice, when it came back, was cold as ice. Not worried, not scared, just annoyed. Hospital? Are you serious? What did you do now? Did you wreck the car? God, Imani, always something. No. I gasped, the pain in my chest flaring up. Marcus, please, you have to come. A truck. It hit me. I have broken ribs. They said I was in a coma for 4 days. The music suddenly got quieter, as if he'd stepped away from the noise, not for privacy, but to be heard more clearly. His next words were not shouted. They were spoken with a low, chilling contempt that cut me deeper than any broken bone. Listen, Imani, he said, his voice flat. I am tired of you. I am so tired of your drama. You are always, always a victim. You are a burden. I am trying to build something here, something real, and you just keep dragging me down. What? What are you talking about? I whispered, confused. I don't have the time, he snapped, and I don't have the money to run around after a loser. Do you understand me, a loser? You're on your own. Take care of yourself. Then the click. He was gone. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, loud and mocking, in the quiet hospital room. I slowly placed the receiver back on the hook. My hand was perfectly steady now. The tears stopped. A loser. I stared at the blank beige wall. The word echoed. Loser. For 10 years I had supported his so-called startup. 10 years of my paycheck from the non-profit job he despised, the job that paid our rent, our bills, our car insurance, the job that funded his life. I paid for the expensive suits he wore to network. I paid for the credit cards he maxed out on business dinners. I was the one who ate leftovers for lunch so he could take potential investors out for steak. For a decade I had been his rock, his support, the person who told him he was brilliant when the world told him he was failing. And now, lying in a hospital bed, broken and alone, I was the loser. The betrayal was so absolute, so pure, it felt like a physical thing. It was a cold, hard stone settling in my stomach, heavier and more painful than any injury from the crash. He hadn't just abandoned me, he had despised me all along. I was still staring at the phone when Nurse Jackie came back in. She was carrying a small tray with a cup of water and some pills. She must have seen the look on my face. The tears were gone. The shock had frozen them. I just felt cold. She put the tray down on the rolling table, her movements slow and deliberate. He said that to you, didn't he, honey? Her voice was soft, but there was a hard edge to it, an anger that was not directed at me. Called you a loser? I just nodded, my eyes fixed on the beige wall opposite my bed. The word loser was ringing in my ears over and over. Jackie sighed that same tired, all-knowing sigh. A loser, that's funny. He's been living like a king. That American Express gold card of yours must have a pretty high limit. My head snapped towards her. The sudden movement sent a spike of white-hot pain through my ribs, but my mind was suddenly faster than the pain. What are you talking about? The credit card alerts, she said, her voice dropping lower. The hospital billing department gets a notification when the patient's card on file is being used heavily in case of fraud. Someone spent $5,000 at the Gucci store at Lenox Square yesterday afternoon, and another $2,000 at Del Frisco Steakhouse the night before that. I figured it was family. I was completely frozen. That's impossible. My cards are in my wallet. My wallet? It's in my purse. The police must have it. From the accident. Oh no, baby, Nurse Jackie said. She stopped adjusting my IV drip and looked me straight in the eye. Her kind face was now a mask of grim determination. The police don't have it. We do. Or rather, we did. My mouth went dry. What? What do you mean you did? She took a deep breath, the kind you take before you deliver terrible news. Security logs. We had to check them this morning when the billing alerts came in. A man named Marcus Vance, your husband, he came here 4 days ago, the same day you were admitted. My heart hammered against my broken ribs. He was here, but you said no one visited. He was here, she repeated, her voice flat and hard. He was here while you were in a coma, but he didn't ask to see you. He didn't ask a single doctor about your condition. He went straight to the nurse's station on the intake floor, flashed his ID, said he was your husband, and that he needed to collect your personal belongings to keep them safe for you at home. She shook her head in disgust. We had a new nurse on shift, first week. She didn't know the protocol. She believed him. She went to the property lockup, and she gave him your purse. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. He was here. While I was unconscious, while I was fighting for my life, he was here. Not to hold my hand. Not to pray for me. He was here to steal my wallet. We only found out for sure this morning, Jackie continued, when we cross-referenced the fraud alerts with the visitor log and the property incident report. He stole from you, Imani, while you were lying right here. The shock was so total, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. It was a cold, sharp blade sliding between my broken ribs, piercing something deeper than any bone. The physical pain from the crash was nothing. This was the real injury. This was the attack. The man I had loved, the man I had supported, had picked my pocket while I was dying. I stopped crying. It was not a decision. The tears just stopped, as if the faucet had been violently shut off. The throbbing pain in my ribs, the ache in my skull, the stiff soreness in my neck, all of it just faded. It went quiet. It was replaced by a profound, sharp, and terrifyingly clear emptiness. It was a cold so deep it burned. He was here. That one fact echoed in the silence of my mind. He was here in this hospital 4 days ago. He knew I was unconscious. He knew I was fighting for my life. And he did not ask to see me. He did not ask a single doctor if I would live or die. He went to the front desk, and he stole my purse. He stole my credit cards while I was dying. And then, like the final missing piece of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place, it hit me. It was not a gradual thought. It was a violent slam, a second impact, just as brutal as the first. The last memory, the one from right before the headlights. It became suddenly vividly clear, no longer a foggy, dreamlike fragment. It was sharp. I was sitting in my car in the parking garage of the law firm Hayes & Associates, the smell of the damp concrete and the old leather of my 10-year-old Honda. My hands were shaking so hard I had to dial his number twice. I was crying then too, but they were tears of joy, of disbelief, of a desperate, life-changing relief. Marcus had picked up his voice instantly, annoyed. What, Imani? I'm busy. I'm in the middle of something. Marcus. Oh my God, Marcus. I had shouted into the phone, my voice breaking. You won't believe it. You will not believe what just happened, Aunt Hattie. She left it all for me. There was a pause. I heard him huff. What are you talking about? He had snapped. Left you what? Her collection of ugly hats, her dusty old books. No, Marcus? I was laughing and crying at the same time, the sound hysterical in the small car. The money. All of it. The lawyer. Mr. Hayes. He just told me. It's $29 million. 29 million, Marcus. We're rich. We're rich. There was silence on his end. It was not for long. But it was long enough. It was not the shout of joy I expected. It was not excitement. It was a dead, flat, calculating silence. I heard him take a slow breath like he was calming himself. Then his voice came back different, lower, urgent. Where are you, exactly? I'm still in the parking garage at the lawyer's office. I'm coming home right now. No. Stay there. Wait. No. No, just come home, he said, his voice strange and quick, stumbling over his own words. Just come straight home. And Imani. Yes, yes. Don't tell anyone. Do you hear me? Not your sister. Not your mother. Nobody. This is our news, just ours. Understand? Yes, yes, of course. I had cried, my heart pounding with love and excitement. I'm on my way. I love you. I had hung up my heart, feeling like it would burst out of my chest. I had put the car in drive, giddy with the fantasy of telling him we could finally pay off all his debts, that his startup could be real, that our lives were finally starting. I was so happy. I had driven out of the parking garage onto the main road, heading for the highway. And on the way home, on that quiet stretch of road, the black truck appeared out of nowhere. It hadn't just hit me. It had hunted me. I remembered it now. It crossing 2 lanes. I remembered it aiming for my door. I stared at the beige hospital wall. The steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. He knew about the money. He was the only one who knew. He called me a loser. He hung up on me. He stole my wallet while I was in a coma. He was spending my money while I lay here. This was not an accident. This was not a hit and run. This was an execution that failed. My husband Marcus had tried to kill me. The pain from my ribs was a burning fire, but a new, colder terror was spreading through me. I was being hunted. My husband had tried to kill me. And his important partners, he was with the party. It was at my sister's house. I was alone, trapped in this hospital bed, a sitting duck. I needed help. In a last wave of desperate primal fear, I grabbed the hospital phone again. There was one last person, my sister, Tamara. Maybe she did not know. Maybe she would believe me. My fingers trembled as I dialed her number from memory. Sister Tamara, I choked out when she answered. The tears I thought had dried up were streaming down my face again, hot and panicked. Please, you have to help me. I'm at Mercy General. I was in a crash. A truck hit me. I paused, sucking in a painful breath, and then I said the words out loud for the first time. Marcus, he was here. He stole my wallet while I was in a coma. And, oh God, Tamara, I think he tried to kill me. The line was silent. Not the shocked silence I had hoped for. It was a heavy, annoyed silence. Imani. Her voice, when it came, was not soft. It was high-pitched, sharp, and dripping with impatience. It was the voice she always used when I was an embarrassment. What in the world are you talking about? Tried to kill you, she snapped. Are you drunk? What kind of nonsense are you trying to pull right now? No, I'm in the hospital. I'm hurt. Please, you have to listen. I don't have time for this, Imani. She cut me off. Do you have any idea what day it is? It's Sunday. Ryan's parents are here. His boss is here. We are in the middle of a very important barbecue for Ryan's firm, and you are calling me with this drama. My mind went blank. A barbecue. She was worried about a barbecue. But, Tamara, he's spending my money. He's at a party. Of course he's at a party, you idiot. She laughed a short, cruel sound. He's here. He's in the backyard with Ryan right now. I could not breathe. He was there. He was at her house, with her husband, while I was in a hospital bed. Marcus is at your house, I whispered, the cold terror now complete. Yes, he's right outside. Tamara's voice was rising in frustration. My husband Ryan is finally helping Marcus get back on his feet. He's introducing him to his partners, helping him get funding for a new important deal. And you have the nerve to call here crying and accusing him of trying to kill you. You are unbelievable. You are just like you've always been, jealous and dramatic. Jealous. I was stunned. Yes, jealous. You're jealous that I married a successful man, she spat. You're jealous that Ryan is willing to help your deadbeat husband when you couldn't. You just had to call and try to ruin it, didn't you? You're trying to make me look bad in front of Ryan's family. Tamara, no. I pleaded. He stole from me. I don't want to hear another word, Amani. You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing this family. Get yourself together, take an Uber and go home, and do not call this house again. The line went dead. She hung up on me. I sat there, the phone buzzing in my hand, the sound of the dial tone screaming in my ear. He was there. They were all together. My sister, my brother-in-law Ryan, and my husband Marcus. They were at a barbecue, laughing, making deals, while spending my money. After trying to kill me. I slowly placed the phone back on the hook. The realization was absolute. I had no family. They were all in on it. Or worse, they simply did not care. My life was less important than their connection to Ryan's money, Ryan's white shoe firm, and the social status they craved. I was the Qden, the scapegoat, and I had just become a problem they needed to solve. 2 days passed. I did not cry again. The rage, so cold and so absolute, had burned away the panic and the pain. My broken ribs were just a dull ache, a background noise to the new sharp clarity in my mind. I was no longer a victim in an accident. I was a survivor of an attack. And I was going to fight. I spent those 2 days on the hospital phone, not with family, but with the only people who mattered, the law firm of Hayes and Associates. I spoke to Mr. Hayes himself. I told him everything. The crash, the timing, my husband's phone call, my sister's betrayal, and the stolen wallet. His response was not emotional. It was immediate and tactical. He confirmed what I suspected. The $29 million trust was ironclad. My signature and my signature alone was required for any transfer. Marcus could not touch a single penny. And that, Mr. Hayes explained, was precisely the problem. With me alive and well, Marcus got nothing. But if I were declared mentally incompetent after a tragic accident, or if I died as my husband, he could petition the court to take control of my estate. This was why he needed me helpless or dead. Ms. Washington. Mr. Hayes's voice was firm over the phone line. You are in danger. Do not speak to anyone. Not your husband, not your sister. We are handling this. I am sending our top litigator to you immediately. She will be your personal counsel. Her name is Brenda Adebayo. She is the best. Do not say a word to anyone until she arrives. So I waited. I stared out the window of my hospital room, watching the busy Atlanta traffic move below. My mind was no longer foggy with pain or grief. It was sharp as a razor. Every part of me was coiled ready. I was waiting for Brenda, but I was also waiting for him. I wanted Marcus to come. I needed him to show his hand. And on the afternoon of the second day, he did. I heard footsteps outside my room, a confident, arrogant stride I knew all too well. The door to my room 204 did not open gently. It was thrown open, slamming against the wall with a bang that made my heart leap. He was here. Marcus walked in, He was not the man I had spoken to on the phone 2 days ago. This was not my annoyed, frustrated, failing husband. This person was a stranger. He was wearing a brand new Tom Ford suit, a deep, rich navy blue that looked impossibly expensive under the harsh hospital lights. I knew with a sudden, sickening certainty that my gold card had paid for that suit. His hair was freshly trimmed, a sharp, perfect lineup that he must have gotten that very morning. He was smiling. It was not a warm smile. It was a cold, sharp, victorious smirk that made my skin crawl. It was the smile of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. But he was not alone. He stepped aside, holding the door open like he was a perfect gentleman. A woman walked in after him. She was, I realized with a jolt of pure intimidation, the most powerful-looking woman I had ever seen. She was African-American, tall, and impossibly elegant. She wore a cream-colored structured designer suit that I was sure cost more than my entire salary for a year. Her heels clicked with sharp, loud authority on the linoleum floor. In one hand she carried a dark, glistening Hermes briefcase. Her hair was pulled back into a severe, perfect bun, and her makeup was flawless. She radiated a level of wealth and power I had only seen in movies. My stomach dropped into a cold, dark pit. Brenda Adebayo. It had to be. This was the name Mr. Hayes had given me. This was the top litigator, the best lawyer from his firm, the one who was supposed to be coming here to protect me. But she was not here to protect me. She was walking in her arm linked with my husband's. She looked at Marcus with a fond, indulgent smile, and then her eyes moved to me. Her gaze swept over my body lying in the cheap, starchy, pale blue hospital gown. She took in my uncombed, matted hair. She saw the ugly purple and yellow bruises on my arm, the IV tube taped to my hand. Her expression, which had been so warm for Marcus, instantly froze. She looked at me with a bored, clinical disdain. It was the look of someone who was about to step on an insect and was annoyed that it would dirty her shoe. "Oh, look at that!" Marcus's voice boomed into the room. It was jovial, loud, like he was greeting an old friend at a crowded party. "It's still alive!" He chuckled, a deep, ugly sound that rattled in his chest. "I have to be honest, I really thought you'd be dead by now. I guess those doctors are better than I thought." What a shame. My mouth was dry. I could not find my voice. My heart was hammering against my broken ribs. I just stared at him, and then at this terrifying woman. This was a nightmare. This was a trap. "Marcus," I finally whispered. My voice was a hoarse, weak croak. What are you doing here? Who is this?" He laughed. A full, genuine belly laugh, like I had just told the funniest joke in the world. He walked right past my bed and stood next to Brenda, sliding a possessive, smooth arm around her tiny waist. He pulled her close, and she leaned into him, her perfectly manacled hand resting on his chest. He leaned down and kissed her, a long, wet, proprietary kiss on the cheek. "Imani, I'm hurt," he said, pouting in fake sympathy. "Is that any way to greet your husband and your replacement?" He gestured to the woman beside him, his smile widening to show all his teeth. "Imani, I want you to meet Brenda. She's my everything, my partner, my protector, my new wife." I stopped breathing. The beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor next to my head seemed to get louder, faster, screaming in the sudden silence. "Well, she will be," he corrected himself, waving his hand as if it were a minor, insignificant detail. "She's my lawyer first, of course, and as soon as she's finished cleaning up this mess." He waved his hand in my direction. He pointed at me in my bed with my broken ribs. "As soon as I am legally free of this trash, then she'll be my wife. We're getting married in Italy. She's already booked the villa in Lake Como." The woman Brenda finally spoke. Her voice was exactly as I expected. Smooth, deep, and utterly indifferent, like she was ordering a coffee. "Marcus, darling, can we speed this up? You said she was ready to sign. I have a 3 o'clock reservation at Bacchanalia and I don't want to be late." "Of course, baby. Anything for you." Marcus beamed at her, his eyes full of adoration. He then turned back to me and his entire face changed. The happy, triumphant mask fell away. His eyes went flat, dead, and cold. He reached into the inner pocket of his brand new suit jacket, the one I paid for, and pulled out a thick stack of folded legal papers. He walked to the side of my bed. He stood over me holding the papers. "You've been a real problem, Imani. A real disappointment." He hissed, his voice low and venomous. And then he threw the papers. He did not hand them to me. He threw them hard. They landed on my blanket, the sharp edge of the legal-sized paper striking my bruised chest, sending a jolt of pain that made me gasp. "Sign them," he ordered. I looked down. The top page read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Divorce papers. "I don't understand," I stammered, my eyes darting to Brenda. "Mr. Hayes, from the law firm. He said you were coming to help me." Brenda actually laughed. It was not a nice sound. It was a short, sharp, mocking bark. "Help you, honey, look at you. You can't even help yourself. Why in the world would I help you? I'm Marcus's lawyer. And his fiancée, and frankly, I find this entire situation pathetic." "But the firm, Hayes and Associates." "The firm works for its clients," she said, tapping her expensive shoe impatiently on the floor. "And right now, my only client in this room is Marcus." "She's the best lawyer in all of Atlanta, Imani," Marcus gloated, leaning in close. I could smell his expensive cologne, the one I had bought him for his last birthday. "And do you know what she's going to do for me? She's going to prove to the court what I've been saying for years. That you're unstable, that you're crazy." He tapped his finger against his temple. "And now after this terrible accident." He made little air quotes with his fingers. "Well, you're clearly mentally incompetent. You're traumatized. You can't possibly be trusted to manage a large sum of money, can you?" My blood ran cold. The plan. This was the plan. "You won't get away with this," I whispered, but the words had no strength, no power. "Get away with it." Marcus laughed again. "I already have. Brenda has already filed the petition. She has medical opinions. She has testimony." "Testimony from who?" "Your sister, of course," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Tamara was more than happy to sign an affidavit saying you've been unstable and jealous for years. Your mother, too. They're both very, very concerned about your mental state. They agree that I should be the one to manage your windfall." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper so Brenda could not hear. "You really thought you could keep $29 million from me, you stupid, stupid woman? You thought you could just cut me out? You tried to kill me." I breathed the words heavy and metallic on my tongue. His smile vanished. His eyes were pure ice. "Prove it," he whispered back. "It was a tragic accident. You're confused, you're hallucinating. That's what the judge is going to hear." He stood back up, straightening his suit jacket. "So here's the deal. You sign the papers. You sign over power of attorney to me. You agree that you are unwell and that I will manage your finances. In exchange, I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you get a nice room in a state-run facility, a quiet one, where you can't hurt yourself." He picked up one of the papers and a pen, holding them out to me. "Or, you don't sign. And Brenda here will paint you as so violently insane that the court will strip you of everything anyway. And then, well, who knows what happens to crazy people who have no one, they just disappear." He was giving me a choice, a living death or a real one. Brenda sighed impatiently. "Marcus, enough. Just get her signature. If she refuses, we'll proceed with the competency hearing on Monday. I've already filed the emergency motion." Marcus glared at me, his patience gone. "Sign the papers, Imani. Be smart for once in your pathetic life. You are a loser. You have nothing. No family, no friends, no money. I have everything. I have the money. I have the power. And I have the woman." He gestured to Brenda. "She's an upgrade, in every possible way." He tossed the pen onto my blanket. "You have 1 hour to sign before I come back. And if you don't, I promise you, you will wish that truck had finished the job." He turned, put his arm back around Brenda's waist, and they walked out of the room, their laughter echoing down the hallway. I was paralyzed. I stared at the woman Brenda. This was the name. The name Mr. Hayes had given me. Brenda Adebayo. The top litigator. The best. The shark who was supposed to swim in and save me. And here she was, not just with Marcus, but with him, on his arm, his new wife. My brain could not connect the two realities. Was this a trap? Had Marcus somehow bought her? Or had he lied to her so completely that she had no idea? The woman standing in front of me, looking at me with such boredom and contempt, could not be my savior. She was my executioner. Brenda sighed a long, impatient sound that was pure theater. She tapped her immaculate blood-red fingernail on the face of her gold Cartier watch. "Sign the papers, darling," she said to Marcus, her voice bored. She did not even look at me. I was just a piece of administrative work she had to get through. "I have a 3 o'clock meeting with a major client. I can't be late." "Of course, baby. Anything for you," Marcus said, kissing her temple like a devoted puppy. He turned back to me, his face instantly hardening. "You heard the lady. Sign the papers, bitch. You're wasting her time." Brenda, still ignoring me, took the sheaf of papers from his hand. She pulled a slim gold pen from her briefcase and clicked it. "Let me just mark the signature lines. You'd be amazed how stupid people can be." She took off her sleek cat-eye glasses, also Cartier, and let them hang from a gold chain. She scanned the top page, her sharp eyes moving quickly. "Petition for dissolution of marriage based on, yes, mental instability," she murmured mostly to herself. "That's good. And the secondary filing? Emergency petition for conservatorship and medical power of attorney. Perfect." She flipped to the last page. "All she has to do is sign here." She pointed the pen at the line. "And the power of attorney right here." She looked up annoyed. "Where is her name chart? I need to verify the spelling for the notary." Marcus, trying to be helpful, pointed a finger at the plastic bracelet on my wrist. "It's right there. On her arm, see? They put it on her when she came in." Brenda leaned in. It was the first time she had actually looked at me, instead of just through me. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on the small white band on my wrist. She read the name printed in black block letters. Imani Washington. I saw her blink. Just a quick, sharp blink. Then her eyes darted to the white chart hanging at the foot of my bed. Her gaze moved from the name, Imani Washington, to the line just below it. Social Security number. Brenda did not move. She just stopped. She froze, her body rigid, her hand still holding the gold pen hovering over the divorce papers. Her face, which had been so full of arrogant, bored confidence, just collapsed. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her flawless makeup looking like a mask on a corpse. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were locked on the chart. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Marcus, who had been admiring his reflection in the dark hospital window, finally noticed the silence. "Brenda," he said, his voice still cheerful. "Baby, what's wrong? You find a mistake." She did not answer. "Brenda." He sounded annoyed now. He stepped closer and touched her arm. "Hey, what is it?" Brenda made a small sound in her throat, a tiny strangled gasp. She took one slow, stiff step backward, away from the bed. Away from me. Then another step. Her hand, the one holding her $1,000 pen, started to shake. The other hand, the one holding her Hermes briefcase, went limp. The briefcase full of papers, a laptop, and probably a small fortune in leather goods slipped from her fingers. It hit the linoleum floor with a heavy, sickening thud. The contents spilled out, papers scattered, a compact went skittering under the bed. She did not even notice. She just stared at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated, career-ending horror. She raised one trembling, manicured finger, pointing it directly at my face. "Oh my God!" she screamed. It was not a small sound. It was a raw, primal, terrified scream that echoed out of the room and down the hospital corridor. It was the sound of a person who had just seen a ghost, or worse, just realized they had made a mistake that was going to cost them everything. Marcus jumped back, genuinely startled. What? What is it, Jesus? Brenda, you scared me. Is she contagious? What's wrong with her? Brenda whipped her head around to face him. Her eyes were blazing wild with a panic I had never seen in anyone. You! She shrieked, her voice cracking. You! You son of a bitch, you lying stupid! Son of a bitch! She turned back to me, her whole body shaking. She looked frantic, desperate, as if I was the one with the power. You are Imani Washington. She stammered, pointing at the chart, then at my face. The Hattie Trust. The $29 million file. You are my client. The silence that followed was absolute. It was deafening. The only sound was the beep, beep, beep of my heart monitor, which was suddenly racing. Marcus just stared at her, his mouth open, his face a mask of total idiotic confusion. Client, he said, forcing a nervous laugh. Baby, what are you talking about? She's a broke nobody. She works for a non-profit. She's got nothing. Silence. Brenda's voice was no longer a scream. It was a roar. The panicked, terrified woman who had dropped her briefcase was gone, replaced in an instant by something far more terrifying. The top litigator Mr. Hayes had promised was suddenly here, her eyes blazing with a cold professional fury that was 1,000 times more dangerous than her fear. She had been played. She had been made a fool of. And now she was in full-on lawyer mode. I am Brenda Adebayo, she said, her voice low, precise, and shaking with controlled rage. I am a senior partner at Hayes & Associates. My firm, the firm you hired me from, is the legal executor of the Hattie Washington Trust. We are the ones who manage the $29 million that belong to her. She pointed that same trembling finger, but it was no longer shaking with fear. It was shaking with rage. It was aimed at Marcus. And you stupid little man, you hired me. You came to my firm to hire me, to steal money from my own client. Marcus was a statue. His smug, arrogant smile was frozen on his face, a grotesque mask that was slowly melting into pure, uncomprehending panic. His face went from tan to gray to a sickly pale white. Wait, hold on, he stammered, holding his hands up. Brenda, baby, you're confused. You're my lawyer. I'm your fiancé. I paid you. I paid you that huge retainer this morning. You paid me with what? Brenda shrieked, the sound echoing off the hard tile floor. You paid me with what, Marcus? That shiny American Express gold card you've been flashing around all week, the one you took me to Gucci with, the one you paid for that $1,000 dinner at Del Frisco's with, the one you transferred my retainer from this morning. She took a step toward him, her eyes narrowed to slits. I saw the name on the card, you idiot! I thought Imani Vance was your old name for the account. It's her card. It's her account. You paid me to steal from my client, using my client's own money. Do you have any idea what you've done? And that's when I found my voice. The pain in my ribs was still there, but it did not matter. The betrayal from my family, the shock, it all melted away, replaced by a sudden diamond-hard core of pure cold rage. I used the railing of the hospital bed, and with a gasp of pain that I refused to let become a sound of weakness, I pulled myself into a sitting position. They both turned to look at me. Marcus looked like a cornered animal. Brenda looked at me, her face still furious, but now waiting. My voice when I spoke was not the weak, reedy whisper of a victim. It was low, it was clear, and it was filled with ice. He didn't just pay you with my card, Counselor Adebayo. Brenda's eyes locked on mine. He tried to kill me. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the steady, accelerated beep of my heart monitor. What? Brenda whispered, her fury giving way to a new dawning horror. I think you need to hear the whole story, I said, my voice gaining strength. 4 days ago, I left Mr. Hayes's office. Your boss. He had just told me about the $29 million. I was so happy I thought we were finally safe. I turned my head and looked directly at the pale, sweating man who was still my husband. I called him, I said, pointing at Marcus. I was in my car in the parking garage. I cried. I told him we were rich. I told him our lives were going to change. He was the only person in the world I told. I looked back at Brenda. He got very quiet. He told me to come straight home and not to tell anyone. Not my sister, not my mother, no one. Less than 2 hours later on the highway, a black truck crossed 2 lanes of traffic and slammed me into a concrete barrier. The driver never stopped. Brenda's hand went to her mouth. And while I was in here, I continued, in a coma fighting for my life, he came to this hospital. But he didn't ask to see me. He didn't ask a single doctor if I was going to live. He went to the front desk, he told them he was my loving husband, and he asked for my purse. I let the words hang in the air. He stole my wallet from my unconscious body. He has been on a spending spree with my money. Your Gucci, your steak dinners, all of it. And then, as the final part of his plan, he hired you, his new wife, the best lawyer in Atlanta. He hired my own lawyer to have me declared mentally incompetent, so he could finish the job he started on the highway. Brenda took a step back. It was not a small, hesitant step. It was a large, violent lurch, as if she had been physically shoved. Her entire body recoiled from my bed. Her eyes locked on my face with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. The blood drained from her face, leaving her dark skin looking ashen, her expensive foundation suddenly a grotesque, waxy mask. I could see her mind working the gears grinding behind her wide, terrified eyes. I could see the exact moment the entire horrifying picture assembled itself in her head. This was not just a case of a cheating fiancé. This was not just a simple, if messy, divorce. She, Brenda Adebayo's senior partner, the sharpest legal mind in Atlanta, had been conned. She had been used as a pawn in an elaborate, vicious scheme. She had just stood here in this hospital room and threatened her own client. She had, on behalf of Marcus, filed a fraudulent petition in court to declare her own client mentally incompetent. She had accepted a retainer, a massive one that was paid for with stolen money. Her client's stolen money. This was not just malpractice. This was disbarment. This was criminal conspiracy. This was accessory to fraud and, God, maybe even accessory to attempted murder. Her entire life, her flawless career, her hard-won partnership, her late Como wedding, her Hermes briefcase now lying gutted on the floor. It was all turning to smoke right in front of her. Her fear, so raw and palpable for a second, instantly curdled. It hardened, it sharpened, it crystallized into something else. It turned into the righteous, white-hot, self-preserving fury of a cornered predator. She was no longer Marcus's fiancée. She was a shark that had just realized it was tangled in a net, and she was going to chew her way out, and she was going to destroy whatever got in her way. Her head swiveled slowly to face Marcus. Marcus, who was still standing there, his face a perfect picture of stupid, panicked confusion. He was still trying to process her client line. When Brenda spoke, her voice was not a scream. It was worse. It was a low, guttural, venomous hiss, a sound so full of hatred it seemed to make the air in the room colder. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking with a rage so deep it was almost silent. "You told me your wife left you." Marcus flinched. "Brenda, baby, I can explain. You told me she abandoned you." Brenda's voice was rising, now gaining power. "You told me she ran off with another man. You told me she was missing." She stepped toward him, and he instinctively stepped back. "You told me she was draining your joint accounts," she continued, her voice a whip crack in the room. "You told me she was vindictive, that she was unstable, that she had a history of paranoid delusions. You swore to me that she was mentally unstable." She was screaming the last words. You begged me to help you. You said you needed to protect your assets from your crazy missing wife. You sat in my office, you held my hand, and you cried, you pathetic lying worm, you used me. No, baby, she's..." Marcus was in full-blown panic. He looked from Brenda's furious, contorted face back to me sitting up in the bed watching. He saw no allies. He saw no escape. He saw the end of his entire plan. His new suit, his new woman, his new life. It was all gone. He was trapped, and like any trapped animal, he turned vicious. "She's lying!" he roared, his face turning a deep, blotchy red. "It's her. She's the one. She's twisting everything. She's ganging up on me. She's trying to trap me." He was desperate. He had no charm left, no logical way out. His entire future was sitting in that bed, a living, breathing, talking witness to his crimes. He had one last primal move: silence the witness. "You shut up!" he bellowed, his eyes bulging. He lunged. He did not lunge at Brenda. He lunged at me. His hands were outclawed, aimed for my throat. He crossed the 2 feet between us. In an instant, his body a mass of raw, desperate violence. I did not even have time to scream, but Brenda did. "Security!" She shrieked, her voice a piercing alarm. The door to my room did not just open, it exploded inward, slamming against the wall so hard the frame shook. It was not just Nurse Jackie. Nurse Jackie was there, her hand out pointing. "In here!" And behind her were 2 men. They were not hospital orderlies in scrubs. They were massive. They were professionals. They wore black polo shirts that were tight across impossibly broad shoulders, with "Event Security" written on the back in discreet letters. They were the men Mr. Hayes had promised. The men who had been stationed outside my door for 2 days, just waiting for this exact moment. Marcus, in his mid-lunge, his fingers inches from my face, did not stand a chance. The first guard moved with a speed that was terrifying for a man his size. He did not try to grab Marcus. He tackled him. He hit him low, a solid blur of muscle driving his shoulder into Marcus's stomach. The force of the impact lifted my husband off his feet, driving him sideways away from my bed, away from me. Marcus let out a grunt of pure surprise as the air was forced from his lungs. He hit the linoleum floor with a heavy, wet thud. He did not get to move. The second guard was on him instantly, his knee pinning Marcus's shoulders to the floor, his hands expertly twisting Marcus's arm behind his back. "Do not move!" the guard roared. Marcus fought. He cursed. He was screaming, bucking his expensive Tom Ford suit, ripping at the shoulder seam, but it was useless. He was like a child fighting 2 grizzly bears. He was pinned. His face, twisted in a mask of pure, impotent rage, was pressed against the dirty hospital floor. The entire thing, from his lunge to his capture, had taken less than 3 seconds. I sat there, my heart hammering my hand at my own throat. Brenda stood panting, her chest heaving, her hands fisted at her sides. She looked at Marcus, pinned and defeated on the floor, and then she looked at me. Her expression was no longer just fury. It was a complex, dawning realization. I was not just her client. I was her only way out. The 2 security guards were professionals. They had Marcus pinned with brutal, practiced efficiency. His arms were wrenched behind his back, his expensive suit jacket bunched up around his shoulders, his face pressed hard against the cheap beige linoleum floor. The man who had walked in like a king, all arrogance and power, was now just a pathetic, writhing animal, grunting and cursing into the dust. "Let me go!" he screamed, his voice muffled by the floor. He tried to buck, to twist, but the guard's knee was planted firmly in the center of his back. "Get off of me! You can't do this!" "She's lying. She's crazy. I'm her husband." I looked at him, truly. Looked at him for the first time. Not as the man I loved, or the man I feared, but as a thing. A trapped, desperate thing. The coldness in my chest was so complete, it was almost peaceful. "Not anymore," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his screaming like a razor. Everyone in the room stopped and looked at me. Marcus went still. I turned my head to Nurse Jackie, who was standing in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and something that looked like righteous satisfaction. "Nurse Jackie," I said, my voice as calm and steady as the heart monitor I was attached to. Could you please call the Atlanta Police Department now? Jackie nodded, her eyes never leaving the scene. What? What do I tell them, honey? Tell them, I said, my gaze dropping back to the man on the floor, that I need to report an attempted murder and a grand larceny. Marcus started to struggle again, roaring, "No, it's a lie. She's manipulating you. And fraud." Brenda's voice sliced through the air louder and sharper than any of them. She was no longer panting. She was pacing. She had her cell phone pressed to her ear with one hand and was gesturing wildly with the other. She was not just a lawyer anymore. She was a general commanding an army. She was talking to someone on her phone but shouting for everyone in the room to hear. "Yes, David, I'm at Mercy General Hospital right now, room 204. I want a full freeze on every asset tied to Marcus Vance. No, I don't care. I have evidence he has been committing wire fraud against the firm for the last 48 hours. She stopped pacing and whirled on Marcus, who had frozen again. His head twisted to look at her in pure dumb shock. "You think you're smart?" She spat at him, her eyes full of fire. "You're a common, stupid criminal. I have the server logs. I have the call recordings. He tried to access the Hattie Trust this morning. He called our wealth management division pretending to be me trying to authorize a transfer. He used a voice memo of Ms. Washington. He must have recorded trying to pass it off as her verbal consent. He tried to impersonate his own wife, my client." She was back on the phone. "And get forensics. I want a trace on that retainer transfer. He paid me with stolen funds. He used Ms. Washington's American Express card. Yes, the client's card. He paid me her own attorney with her own stolen money to file a fraudulent competency claim against her. He's done. We are going to bury him under the jail." She snapped her phone shut. It was over. Marcus knew it. I could see it in his eyes. He stopped struggling. His body went limp. He just lay there, his face pressed to the floor. It was no longer, "He said, she said." It was not just my word against his. His brilliant plan, hiring me using my cards trying to access the trust, had created a mountain of digital, financial, and audio evidence. The best lawyer in Atlanta, that he had hired to be his weapon, had just become his executioner. She knew exactly where every single one of his bodies was buried, because he had been the fool who had led her to the graves. He just lay there, defeated. One of the guards hauled him to his feet, his hands cuffed behind his back with a zip tie. The guard's hand was clamped firmly on the back of his neck. Marcus's navy blue Tom Ford suit was torn at the shoulder and covered in dust from the floor. His perfect hair was mussed. His face was blotchy and red. He was just a small, pathetic man. Nurse Jackie appeared at the doorway again, her face grim. "The police are on their way. They're sending a detective. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Brenda nodded, all business. She picked up her phone and started dialing again, already one step ahead. "David, get me a line to the DA's office, the fraud division. Yes, I'll hold." The guards pushed Marcus against the wall. He did not resist. He just stared at the floor, breathing heavily. He had lost. He had lost it all. The money, the woman, his freedom. And he had done it all to himself. Just as Nurse Jackie finished speaking, 2 uniformed Atlanta police officers appeared in the doorway, their expressions grim. The security guards immediately stepped back, handing Marcus over to the police, who pulled him up from the wall and began cuffing his hands behind his back with metal handcuffs, replacing the zip tie. The metallic click of the cuffs locking into place was the loudest sound in the room. Marcus had been limp defeated, but the cold, hard touch of the steel seemed to jolt him back to life. A last desperate surge of narcissistic rage flooded his system. He knew he was finished, but he was not going to go down alone. He was going to set one last fire. He suddenly went rigid. His face, which had been pale and defeated, turned a deep, blotchy red. His eyes, wild and hateful, swiveled past the cops, past the guards, past Brenda, and locked onto me. "You won't win!" he screamed, his voice cracking with pure, undiluted hatred. He lunged forward again, even with his hands cuffed, forcing the officers to wrestle him back. "You won't win, you bitch!" He was practically spitting, his face contorted. You think you're so smart, huh? You think you figured it all out? You think I did this alone? Brenda and I both froze. Every person in the room went still. I looked at Brenda. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, met mine. Alone. What? What did you say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus heard me. And he laughed. It was not the confident, charming laugh I used to know. It was a high-pitched, hysterical, broken sound. It was the laugh of a man who had nothing left to lose and wanted to pull the entire world down with him. You're so stupid, Imani. He cackled even as the officers began to drag him toward the door. You think this stops me? You think this is over? I'm just the beginning. He twisted his head, fighting against the officer's grip, his eyes still locked on me. You won't get a single penny. Not one. I'm going to tell Tamara. I'm going to tell Ryan. They know everything. My blood ran cold. Tamara, my sister, Ryan, her husband. They won't let you get away with this. Marcus was screaming now, his voice echoing down the hall as they pulled him out of the room. Your white brother-in-law. Your precious, powerful Ryan. He has connections you can't even imagine, you stupid bitch. He'll have me out by morning. He'll take care of me. He'll bury you. He'll finish the job you'll never ever win. The police officer finally shoved him out of view. His screams grew fainter down the corridor, but the threat remained hanging in the sterile air of my hospital room like a toxic cloud. I looked at Brenda. Her face was pale. The triumphant fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by a new cold, calculating understanding. This was not over. This was not just about Marcus anymore. He was just a pawn. This was about my entire family. This was about my sister Tamara. And this was about her powerful, connected, wealthy white husband, Ryan Brooks. The man who had been at the barbecue with Marcus. The man who was really in charge. The room was suddenly shockingly quiet. The only sounds were the fading echo of Marcus's screams down the hall and the steady rhythmic beep of my heart monitor. The two Atlanta police officers gave me a grim nod and followed their colleagues, leaving me, Brenda, and Nurse Jackie in the room. Nurse Jackie quietly began picking up the scattered contents of Brenda's Hermes briefcase. Brenda stood in the middle of the room, her back to me. She was perfectly still for a long moment, her shoulders rigid. I watched her take one deep, shuddering breath, then another. She slowly bent down and took her briefcase from Nurse Jackie, her movements stiff. She straightened up. She adjusted the jacket of her designer suit, pulling the cream-colored fabric taut. She smoothed her hair, which was still perfect. When she finally turned around, the terrified, hysterical woman who had screamed, "Oh my God," was gone. The furious, betrayed fiancé who had shrieked at Marcus was also gone. The person facing me now was the shark Mr. Hayes had promised. Her eyes were cold, clear, and absolutely lethal. There was no fear. There was no panic. There was only the dead, flat focus of a predator that had just identified its real target. She was not just angry. She was insulted. And she was in damage control mode. She walked to the foot of my bed, her heels clicking with sharp, renewed authority. "Ms. Washington," she said. Her voice was no longer a scream. It was a low, precise, and dangerous instrument. "That man, he deceived both of us. He played me for a fool. He used my reputation, my firm, and my affection to commit fraud. He nearly destroyed my career. He nearly cost my firm its biggest client." She paused, and her eyes, if possible, got even harder. "For that, I owe you an apology, and I owe him a lesson, a very public, very painful lesson." I looked at this powerful, dangerous woman. She was not my friend. She was not here out of kindness. She was here to protect her own interests, her firm, and her reputation. But right now our interests were perfectly aligned. He had tried to destroy both of us. I took a breath, feeling the pain in my ribs, but my voice was just as cold and clear as hers. "I need a lawyer, Ms. Adebayo." Brenda looked at me, a flicker of something, maybe respect, in her eyes. I continued, "I don't need his new wife. I don't need his angry, jilted fiancé. I need the best litigator in Atlanta. I need the shark, because he was right about one thing. Brenda did not even have to ask. She knew. Ryan Brooks, she said, the name sounding like a curse on her tongue. My sister Tamara and her husband Ryan, I confirmed. Marcus is just a loud-mouthed, greedy fool. He's a pawn. Ryan is the one with the money and the power. He's the one who was at the barbecue with Marcus. He's the one who really tried to kill me. Brenda's lips pulled back in a smile that was not a smile at all. It was a baring of teeth. Then we have a lot of work to do. He may have connections, but I have a $29 million motive to protect my client. He has no idea what's coming for him. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. Let's start with your brother-in-law, Ryan Brooks. A week had passed. I was no longer in the cold, sterile room at Mercy General, with its smell of antiseptic and fear. Brenda had moved me under a fake name to the presidential suite at the Four Seasons in downtown Atlanta. It was a beautiful gilded cage. The windows were floor to ceiling, showing a breathtaking view of the city I no longer felt safe in. Two discreet, but very large security guards arranged and paid for by the law firm were stationed in the hallway 24 hours a day. My body was healing. The dark, ugly bruises on my ribs had faded to a sickly yellow, and the pain was now a dull, constant ache instead of a sharp stab. But the real battle I was learning was just beginning. Brenda sat across from me on a plush, cream-colored sofa. Her laptop was open and she was all business. The woman who had been Marcus's lover, his new wife, was gone. She had been replaced by the shark, the litigator, the woman whose entire reputation was on the line. All right, Amani, she said, her voice crisp. Here's the situation. Marcus is at the Fulton County Jail. As we expected, bail was denied. He has pled not guilty to all charges. She took a sip of her coffee. And just as he threatened, your brother-in-law has made his move. Ryan Brooks has hired David Chen to represent Marcus, the most expensive and the most ruthless criminal defense attorney in the state. Next to her, on a matching armchair, sat a man named Mike. He was the opposite of Brenda in every way. He looked rumpled in a linen shirt that was creased, and he had the tired, patient eyes of a man who had seen everything. He was the private investigator and ex-cop that Brenda had hired with my money. Mike leaned forward and opened his own file. His voice was a low, steady gravel. We started with the truck just like you asked. It was a needle in a haystack. The driver was good, used a cloned plate. But we found a discrepancy on a toll camera 3 exits before the crash site. The cloned plate had a different registration sticker. We got the real plate. He slid a grainy black and white photograph across the glass coffee table. It was the truck captured at a toll plaza. The plate is registered to a shell company, he said. An LLC, based in Delaware. It's called Brooks Holdings. I laughed. The sound that came out of me was not happy. It was a short, sharp, bitter sound that startled even me. Brenda raised an eyebrow. You know that name? Oh, I know that name. I said the words tasting like poison. Brooks Holdings LLC, that's what he calls it. His personal investment fund, my brother-in-law. I had to explain. My sister Tamara, she married Ryan Brooks. Ryan he's white. He comes from old money in Virginia. He's a managing director at a big investment firm, and he has never ever let my family forget that he is better than us. I looked out the window. He hates us, really. He thinks we're beneath him. But my sister, Tamara, she worships him. She worships the big house in Buckhead, the country club, the white friends. She would do anything to keep being Mrs. Ryan Brooks. And for years, at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I've had to sit there and listen to Ryan brag about his personal fund, Brooks Holdings, and how he uses it to make smart, aggressive plays. Mike nodded, as if I had just confirmed everything he already knew. That makes sense, he said, and he pushed another piece of paper across the table. It was a copy of a bank transfer. Because the payment to the driver, a $50,000 wire, was sent from an account managed directly by Ryan Brooks. The transfer was initiated 2 days before your accident. My breath hitched, but Mike was not finished. And then there are the jail calls. Marcus is arrogant, but he's also stupid. He thinks because he's talking to his new lawyer, David Chen, it's all privileged. But the calls to his family are not. We got a warrant. We've been listening. He pressed a button on a small digital recorder he placed on the table. The lavish hotel suite was suddenly filled with my husband's tinny, panicked voice. Ryan, listen to me. She's got Brenda. She knows. You have to get me out of here. You promised. You promised me this would be clean. Mike hit. Stop, then play again. A different call. This one was to my sister. Tamara, you have to make him. You tell your husband he better not abandon me in here. You tell him what I told you. If I go down, you both go down with me. You hear me? You tell him to take care of that bitch, or I'll take care of him. Mike pressed stop. The silence in the room was absolute. It was no longer a theory. It was a fact. They had all of them tried to kill me. Brenda held up a hand, silencing Mike. Her expression was grim. The attempted murder was Plan A Imani. It was messy. It was brutish. Frankly, it was all Marcus. But Plan B is much smarter. It's more insidious. And it's all Ryan. She slid another thicker document across the glass table. This one was stamped by the Fulton County Family Court. They didn't just try to kill you, Brenda said, her voice flat. They have a backup plan for when you survived. As of this morning, Ryan and Tamara Brooks have filed an emergency petition for conservatorship. I just stared at her. Conservatorship like what they did to Britney Spears? Exactly, Brenda said, her eyes hard. They are claiming that you are mentally unstable and psychologically traumatized as a result of your tragic accident. They claim you are paranoid delusional and completely incapable of managing your own affairs, specifically incapable of managing a $29 million estate. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. No one will believe that. It's insane. They will, Brenda said quietly. They will because they have a key witness. Someone who is willing to swear under oath that you have always been this way. Someone the court will see as a loving, concerned, and completely credible source. A cold dread worse than anything I had felt before began to creep up my spine. Who? Brenda looked me straight in the eye. Your mother. I stopped breathing. My mother, no, she wouldn't. Brenda turned a page and slid it over. It was an affidavit, a sworn statement, signed by my mother, Patricia Washington. Brenda began to read from her own copy, her voice devoid of emotion. She attests that you have always been the unstable one, that you have suffered from delusions of grandeur and persecution since childhood, that you harbored an intense pathological jealousy toward your sister Tamara's success, and that in her loving maternal opinion, you are a danger to yourself, and this sudden unearned wealth will only fuel your tragic mental decline. I did not move. I just stared at the signature on the page. My mother. The woman who was supposed to protect me. The one who always favored Tamara, who always called me too sensitive, who always sided with Marcus. This entire time, my husband, my sister, my brother-in-law, and my mother. All of them. Every single person I was supposed to be able to trust in the world. They had all conspired first to kill me, and then when that failed to have me locked away, declared legally insane so they could steal my money. I closed my eyes. I felt the dull ache in my ribs. I felt the cold, empty space in the hotel suite. Then I opened them. The grief was gone. The shock was gone. The fear was gone. There was nothing left inside me but a cold, hard, empty space that was waiting to be filled. When is the hearing? I asked. My voice was calm. It did not even sound like mine. Brenda looked up from her file, surprised by my tone. It's an emergency petition. They're fast-tracking it. It's scheduled for next week, Monday morning. I stood up. The city lights of Atlanta sparkled below a sea of diamonds that suddenly seemed very, very clear. They want a show in court, I said, turning to look at Brenda and Mike. They want to put my mental state on display. I walked over to the full-length mirror by the door. I looked at myself, the bruises, the tired eyes, the woman they thought they could break. All right, I said, my voice quiet, but full of a new terrible power. But we're not waiting until Monday, and we're not going to their court. Brenda stood up. Imani, what are you talking about? I turned to face them. They're all at my mother's house right now. I know it. It's Sunday. They're having their little celebration dinner. They're toasting to their victory. I looked at Mike. Your men are still outside, right? He nodded. 2 in the hall, 2 downstairs. Good, I said. Brenda, call the police. Tell them you have evidence of an active conspiracy to commit murder, and you are accompanying your client to confront the suspects. Tell them to meet us there quietly. Brenda's eyes widened, and then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. She understood. I looked back at my reflection. They want a show, we'll give them one. The performance of a lifetime. Let's go to dinner. That same night. My mother's house in the suburbs was a place I had always associated with the smell of roasting chicken collard greens and the sound of my own failures being discussed over sweet potato pie. It was the traditional Sunday dinner, a sacred ritual in our family, the one place we all pretended to be perfect. And as we pulled up in a silent, unmarked car, I knew they would be there. I could feel it. Brenda sat beside me, all sharp angles and quiet fury. She had 2 plainclothes detectives with her, their faces impassive and bored, as if this was just another stop on a long, disappointing night. They were not here to intimidate. They were here to arrest. We walked up the familiar concrete path. The front door was unlocked, as it always was on Sundays. From the foyer, I could hear them. They were in the dining room, and the sounds were not of grief or concern for their missing family members. The sounds were of celebration. I could hear the clink of silverware on my mother's good china, the set she only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I heard the pop of a cork followed by light tinkling laughter. My sister Tamara. We stopped hidden by the deep shadow of the hallway. I could smell the rich, savory aroma of the roast, a smell that had once meant comfort, and now only meant betrayal. They were toasting. I just cannot believe that child, my mother Patricia's voice said. It was sharp with that familiar stinging indignation she always reserved for me. I truly cannot. All these years, acting like a little martyr at her nonprofit, acting holier than thou while she had that money, just hiding it from her own family. It's deceitful, that's what it is. And then, she continued, her voice rising, to just let her poor husband Marcus get arrested like some common criminal. It's a disgrace and embarrassment. And in front of you, Ryan, I am just so sorry you have to be associated with this mess. Now, Patricia, stop worrying your head, my sister. Tamara's voice, slick and proud, chimed in. I could picture her perfectly twirling her wine glass, leaning on her husband's arm, the queen of the dinner table. Ryan has it all under control. I told you he would. I heard her take a delicate sip. Ryan's lawyer is the best in Atlanta. He's going to go to court on Monday morning, and he's going to prove what we've always known, that Imani is just not stable. She's paranoid. That accident. Her voice was laced with fake pity. You know, it just pushed her right over the edge. She's hysterical. So she said, and I knew that we meant her and Ryan will take control of the assets. It's the only responsible thing to do. It's for the good of the family. We'll make sure she's taken care of. In a good facility, of course, a quiet one. Then his voice. The one I despised more than any other. That smooth, condescending, old money drawl that he as a white man used to assert his superiority in our home and our black family. Exactly, Tamara, Ryan said. Your mother is right to be upset, but you are right to be practical. I heard the distinct, expensive clink of him setting his wine glass down. The woman is incompetent. She can't even manage her own marriage, let alone a multi-million-dollar fortune. She never could. We will manage the money for her. Think of it as a finder's fee. A reward, really. For all the years we've had to put up with her. Laughter. My mother and my sister. They laughed. A light, airy, relieved sound. They laughed at the joke. That was the moment. I took a single deep breath. The ache in my ribs was a dull fire, but my voice was pure ice. Mentally unstable Ryan. The laughter stopped. It did not fade. It shattered. It was as if I had thrown a switch, plunging the entire house into a dead, electric, paralyzing silence. I heard a fork clatter against a plate, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the suddenly quiet room. I stepped out of the shadow and into the warm light of the dining room. The three of them jerked their heads toward the door as one. Their faces. I will see their faces in my dreams for the rest of my life. My mother's mouth was open, a piece of food half chewed, her hand frozen over her plate. Tamara's wineglass was stopped halfway to her lips, her eyes wide with pure animal shock, the color draining from her face, and Ryan, his smug, satisfied country club smile dissolved. It did not just fade, it fell off his face. His skin, usually so pink and self-assured, went a pale, sickly, chalky white. He looked like he had seen a ghost. But I was not a ghost. I was not the weak, broken Imani they remembered. I was not the scapegoat in oversized sweaters they could mock and dismiss. I had spent 2 hours at the hotel getting ready. I was wearing a blood-red, razor-sharp pantsuit, a power suit. My hair, which they were used to seeing in a simple puff, was pulled back into a severe, powerful, tightly coiled bun. The style showed the one thing I wanted them to see: the faint, silvery, crescent-shaped scar on my temple. The receipt from the accident he had paid for. I was not the victim. I was the reckoning, and I had not come alone. Brenda stepped up beside me, a dark, elegant shadow in a charcoal gray suit. Her heels clicked once-twice on the hardwood floor. She was not carrying her briefcase like an accessory. She was holding it like a bomb. Behind us, filling the doorway, were the two detectives. They were large, impassive, and their plainclothes suits did nothing to hide the weight of the badges and equipment clipped to their belts. They did not look at the food. They did not look at the fine china. They did not look at my mother or my sister. They looked right at Ryan. My mother, Patricia, was the first to find her voice. Her shock turned instantly to her default setting: anger. "Imani!" she shrieked, slamming her hand on the dining table, making the good china rattle. "What? What are you doing here? You are not welcome in this house. You get out!" I took another step into the room, my eyes cold. "I came to take back what's mine, Mama, and to watch the final act of your performance." "That's enough," Ryan barked. He shot up from his chair, his napkin falling to the floor. He tried to puff out his chest to regain the control he had just lost. His face was blotchy and red. "You are trespassing. I am ordering you to leave this property right now before I call the police." "Oh, there's no need to call them," Brenda said, stepping forward. She unclasped her briefcase with a loud, sharp click. "They're already here." On cue, the two detectives stepped out from the hallway, moving past us to stand in the center of the room. They didn't say anything. They just stood there. Their presence sucked all the air out of the room. Ryan's face, which had been red with bluster, turned a chalky, sickly white. Tamara let out a small, terrified whimper and shrank back in her chair. "What? What is this?" she stammered, looking at me. "Imani, what did you do? Are you crazy?" I laughed. The sound was cold. "Am I crazy?" I repeated, taking a step toward her. "Am I crazy, Tamara? Or is it crazy to conspire with your husband? Is it crazy to use his company Brooks Holdings to hire a truck to run your own sister off the road?" "That's a lie!" Tamara shrieked, but her voice was thin and panicked. "Is it?" Brenda said. She pulled a document from her briefcase and slapped it on the dining table right on top of the roast chicken. "Ryan Brooks, You are under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree and financial fraud. One detective stepped forward and pulled Ryan's hands behind his back. You have the right to remain silent. Tamara Brooks. Brenda continued, slapping down a second document. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. We have your text messages to Marcus Vance. My favorite, she said, reading from her phone, is the one where you said, hurry up and get it done. Mom has already agreed to testify that Imani is unstable. The second detective moved to Tamara, pulling her up from her chair by the arm. No. Ryan suddenly roared, his bravado gone, replaced by pure, sniveling panic. He tried to twist away. It was her. It was all her. She told me to. She pushed me. She said Imani deserved it. You coward! Tamara screamed, all her poise gone, replaced by the feral rage of a cornered rat. You told me it was a sure thing. You ruined me. She turned her face to me, her eyes full of venom. You did this. You destroyed everything, you ungrateful bitch. The police cuffed them both and began pulling them from the room. Their Sunday dinner was over. I watched them go. Then I turned to the only person left at the table, my mother. She was just sitting there, stunned, her face slack, her eyes empty. I walked slowly right up to her until I was standing over her. You always said I was the failure, Mama, I said, my voice quiet. You always said I was the disappointment. She just stared at me. Your golden boy Marcus tried to kill me. Your golden girl Tamara helped him. And you were the star witness. I pointed to her plate. All of this, all your loyalty, all just to impress a man who doesn't even respect you. I leaned in closer. Enjoy your dinner. And then I turned and walked away. 6 months later, I sat in the front row of a courtroom. It smelled like stale coffee and old wood. I was no longer the woman in the hospital bed or the ghost in the red pantsuit. I was just a witness. My voice as a voiceover would tell you what happened next. Marcus was the first to be sentenced. The evidence Brenda and the detectives found was overwhelming. The wire fraud, the server logs from the law firm, the bank statements from my stolen card, and his own idiotic, panicked attack on me in the hospital. He was found guilty of attempted murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit fraud and grand larceny. The judge was not kind. He called him a parasite and a stain on his own community. He was sentenced to 25 years in a state penitentiary with no possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Marcus, dressed in an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit, turned his head. He looked right at me. I was not expecting remorse. I was not expecting an apology. And I did not get one. His eyes were not sad. They were not defeated. They were full of a burning, toxic hatred. He was not sorry for what he did. He was just furious that I had lived. Then came Ryan. My brother-in-law, Ryan Brooks, the king of our family, did what all cowards with money do. He tried to make a deal. To save himself, he confessed to everything. He admitted to hiring the truck. He admitted to funding the entire scheme. He admitted to conspiracy. And then, with a pathetic, sniveling desperation, he blamed everyone else. He told the court that he was manipulated, that he was pressured, that he was not in his right mind. And he pointed his finger directly at my sister. He told the court that Tamara was the true mastermind, that she was the one consumed with jealousy, that she was the one who pushed him, who gave him the idea, who said, I deserved it. The judge did not buy all of it, but the confession got him a reduced sentence. Not freedom, but a deal. Ryan Brooks, the man from old money, was sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder. He was permanently stripped of his financial licenses. His career was over. But the real payoff came from his family. His wealthy white Virginia family, who had been sitting in the courtroom looking horrified, did not wait for the appeal. They disowned her. Not him. They disowned Tamara. The black woman who in their eyes had corrupted their son, who had brought this shame and this scandal to their good name. They cut her off completely and immediately. She lost her house. She lost her status. She lost her money, and she lost her husband. She was convicted as an accomplice and received 10 years. She lost everything. And my mother, Patricia Washington, she sat in the back of the courtroom alone. She had lost both of her golden children, her perfect successful daughter, and her brilliant charismatic son-in-law, all gone. Her entire world, the one she had built on appearances and favoritism, had evaporated. She sat there, a little old woman, watching her whole life crumble. She has called me hundreds of times. She leaves long, rambling, weeping messages. Sometimes she's angry, sometimes she's begging, sometimes she's just crying. I have never answered. I have not answered a single one. Here is the lesson I learned from this entire nightmare. My story shows that sometimes the people who are supposed to be your greatest protectors are actually your most dangerous predators. Money, especially a large amount like $29 million, does not change people. It simply reveals who they truly were all along. It acts like a spotlight illuminating the greed, jealousy, and cruelty that were hiding in the shadows of family. They called me a loser, but my worth was never ever defined by their validation. The ultimate justice was not just watching them get arrested. It was realizing I had survived and that my new life would be built on my own strength, far from their poison. Have you ever had a family member try to convince you or others that you were the unstable one? I would love to read your story in the comments below.